going to get started on the speaking part. Everybody just keep eating. There's more in there if you need seconds, just feel free to get up and go get more. The reminder that there's cakes over here, anniversary cakes. One chocolate, one vanilla. All right, so we can put that slideshow on, Paula. So the day has finally arrived. 50 years in the making. And so when the board first approached me back in February, it seemed a long time to October. But I gladly accepted and put a committee together. But I knew I'd need a speaker for the event, and I was thinking, well, is this worthy of a general superintendent coming? And he's not here yet, so I'm not quite sure. But I called Dr. Johnson, our district superintendent, and said, hey, we're coming up on 50 years. Is this a worthy event to try to get a general superintendent to come speak? He goes, yeah, you bet it is. And he goes, in fact, I'm putting it on my calendar. And so he's still en route. He's driving here. They were both in Oklahoma this morning. And tell you, working with the general office and the district office, I've got a brand new appreciation for those guys, and women. They do a lot of traveling, and it's very special to me that they wrote us in to be here. So Dr. Graves and I think Dr. Johnson will make it here before this is over tonight. Dr. Graves, I'm not quite sure. He probably will, but he'll definitely be speaking tomorrow. But I started thinking about there's a musician in Wimberley, the Jesse Stratton Band, and he has a song that I thought was kind of appropriate. I'm not going to sing it, but thinking about these guys traveling. And he wrote this to his I think, girlfriend at the time, wife now, this love song and how much he loved them. He goes, the refrain goes, I'll love you as long as the bluebonnets bloom under the hill country sky. I'll love you until they finish construction on I-35. And so knowing those two guys are driving all the way down I-35, and Pastor Winston did it this morning as well, that's a lot of love you guys have for us. And so we really appreciate it. And so next slide, please. Oh, actually, I have it. I can do it. So first, want to start out by thanking my committee members. They were great. Darlene Ball, Kiki Carroll, Leanne Lynham, Dwayne Rathburn, Claudine Rumbawa, Frank Rumbawa, Alita Sykes, and Carly Webster. Thank y'all. Yes, please. Thank y'all so much. But too many buttons pushed. Thinking back when the board first asked me if I would take this on, being a scientist, my mind straight went to, I'm going to gather all the data I can, and I'm going to talk about how the church went from this to that, and all these numbers, and I did. Alita gathered up all the old board reports, and I was like, I'm going to find all the first, and this and that, and I put a lot of things together. But then, and I will show you a few statistics, but mostly, the more I thought about it, it's the people. All these points and lines along these graphs, those are individuals on all those curves. And there's a real personal connection to these 50 years. Some of these individuals may have been here at very difficult times in their lives. Others may have had everything just going perfect, super times. Others have moved on. Some have passed away. Some got married in the church. Some have been buried in the church. But the thing is, they're all connected. They were all within these walls for some period of time. And we made a real effort to find, go through all the, there's Dr. Johnson pulling in now. There you go. Y'all mind if I tell them the song again? It was kind of, okay. Y'all be sure to get some barbecue up here. Thank y'all so much for coming. Dr. Johnson, Dr. Graves. So just before you leave, I gave them some lyrics to a song from a musician in Wimberley, the Jesse Stratton Band, that showed how much y'all must love us to be coming here today. And it was, the refrain is, I love you as long as the bluebonnets bloom under the hill country sky. I'll love you until they finish construction on I-35. So please, what's that? Yeah, I know. I was thinking about y'all. Please gather some barbecue and come join us. We have some reserved seating for y'all up front. So looking through all the old phone records, email list, directories, there's been a lot of people that have been associated with this church. A lot. And we made an attempt to contact every one of them through emails or Facebook. We did a lot of sleuthing, and we found most of the people. Some responded back pretty quickly, and some I never heard from. Some of the letters got returned, but that's okay. I know that we had an effect on a lot of people, and one person in particular that responded immediately was, I don't know if you remember the Childers family. Cindy Childers, single mother of 3. She worked as a nursery worker for a while in, I guess, the 90s. And her daughter, Kayla, is living in Florida, and she immediately, I hadn't had any contact with her in however many years that is, 30 or something. And she immediately, when she got the notice on Facebook message, she responded back about her memories of being here as a little girl. I mean, this was an impact on her. And then right after that, her brother emailed me from New York. And he was like, I'm sorry, I can't come. I'm deployed right now. And so I was like, well, where are you deployed? He goes, well, I can't tell you, And so, but he's in the Army. And so, but we made an impact, And when you look at the list and where people are living now, it's 26 different states in the U.S. People are out. Maybe some aren't following the Lord anymore, but I bet most are. And the things they learned here, hopefully they're influencing where they are today. But it doesn't stop in the United States. We've got people in other parts of the world. I don't know where Tommy Childers is, but there should be another red dot up there somewhere where he's deployed. We can probably make a few guesses, but now the blue shaded area, that's Zimbabwe. And so we don't have anyone living there now, but they're like family to a lot of us. Les and Lane started Noah's Farm, and this church has supported that effort so much that I wanted to put Zimbabwe up there. So let's dig into the numbers a little bit first. And so, full church members, we started out, it varies depending on, it's like 32 to 42 charter members, but some are a little bit below 50. And then, oops, I didn't advance that one. But the numbers continue to go up, and that's what you want to see, right? A positive line. We keep growing and growing in full church members. But when you look at weekly corporate worship, it's really declined. It doesn't really match up with the numbers of members. And when you look at churches our size, Nazarene churches across North America, the same trend is happening. The people are joining, but they're just really not coming. And COVID, of course, did part of it, but if you look at the date, I think it's like 2015 or so. Earlier than that, numbers really started declining before COVID. And there's a survey that was done of church-going members, and people indicated if I go to church 2 times a month, I consider myself a full-time attender, and that may be part of the numbers there as well. People are going, just not as much. Now this next graph is a little busy. I'm pulling out more of my geekiness, I guess, and but you always hear about age structure. Are our churches dying? Are we just not getting new kids in, and eventually as we keep aging and aging, is the church just going to go away? The only way I knew that kind of attacked this was to use Sunday school records, because, that's easily divided up between kids, teens, and adults. This probably also reflects what's happening in the worship service itself, but these numbers are based upon our Sunday school records, which started in 1977, and I ran them through 2021. So get you a little acquainted with the graph. The bottom orange is the percentage of kids. So you get 100% attendance. So in that first year of record, 1977, it's about 50% of those going to Sunday school were kids. And then it was about 10-15% teens, and then the rest, about 25% or so, were adults. And you can see how it changes over time. For the most part, adults is always the largest number, and the teens tended to be second. Some years they took over and were higher than the children, but most years the children were higher. So when we look at the average over those 50, well, here would be 43 years or something. The average Sunday school attendance over that time, adults made up 52%, teens 19%, and children 25%. This last year, just seeing, are things changing, 62% so were adults, and so the adult population was increasing. The teens were about the same at 21%, but children were 17%. They were declining. But, you look at the last few weeks here, and I think we run the numbers for 2022, those children numbers are going to really be going up. That 62, 21, 17%, when you look at Nazarene churches across North America, churches our size, those numbers are almost exactly what we have in this congregation. Other than the teens and the children numbers are flipped. There's more teens than children. I don't know, one of the general or district superintendents would have an idea on is that good, is that bad? This is what we're looking at right now. People always want to look at church income, and so it's on the rise too. Our giving keeps up with our congregation. I've always heard ever since I've been a member here, this is such a giving church, and it is. Not just financially, but giving people's time and energy and love. It's an amazing church. But when you compare the amount of giving per capita for other North American Nazarene churches our size, we are significantly higher on the amount of giving per individual. But to me, more importantly, how much do we give to global missions? And our church, just does a wonderful job supporting global missions. We're not just looking inside. So now let's look at our church history more from a human standpoint rather than the numbers. So how did we go from having this idea of let's get a Nazarene church started in New Braunfels, Texas, to having one built and then selling that one and building the building we're in today? Well, this story all starts out in Houston, Texas. And there was a young mother of 4 girls. I can't look. Okay. This is a brick from the old church. I wanted to bring that in case I started, having trouble speaking. I thought it looked like our church, so that's the one I picked out from the rubble. So this woman's husband had accepted a job in New Braunfels, and she was really resistant about moving to New Braunfels. But she goes, okay, I know God's really telling me I need to move, but, I'm involved in Nazarene Church here in Houston. I've got my family here. I've got a good job. But God kept working on her. In fact, she told me, and you can get more specific details from her, but one day her supervisor called her in and said, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to let you go. And so then Nan knew, okay, God's getting serious. I gave it away. God's serious with me about moving. Now he's like, okay, you don't have a job. So she did it. this woman, I gave it away, Nan. We know her as Miss Nan. And at the time, she was married to Clarence Merchant. And so she moves here. Come to find out there's no Nazarene church in New Braunfels. Doesn't know anyone, but she hears about this pastor Arnold at the First Baptist Church. And there'd been a flood in May 1972, like we see every few years here, and a lot of people were affected by that flood. And so Nan's getting here late summer, a few months after that big flood, and she heard that there's this Pastor Arnold at First Baptist Church is really involved in helping these people, these flood victims. So she was just kind of naturally drawn to him. She goes, well, I'm going to go check that out and meet with that pastor. So she meets with Pastor Arnold, and she goes, I'm a Nazarene, and I'm coming in here. And he goes, you know what? I've got a very active couple in this church that are Nazarenes. I'm going to connect y'all up. I think y'all would hit it off. And those were Mac and Bernice McGraw. And they are now deceased, but they became good and fast friends. And I think that a light bulb kind of started, hey, I'm not the only Nazarene here. There's some others. And then, Mac and Bernice knew Harold and Jackie Rathburn, Dwayne's parents. And they were attending First Church in San Antonio at the time. And, it's a lot of work getting church started. In fact, Harold and Jackie actually physically built a lot of the church, And I suspect Dwayne probably had a hammer in his hand, right? Putting some nails in that building. And so it was a lot of hard work. But Jackie I found a quote from her. It says, I don't mind all the hard work. I don't mind all the hard work as long as it's here for my grandchildren. And I'd like to play a video now of one of her grandchildren.
On 50 years, we are so happy and so wish that we could be with you for this special celebration. I am Julie Rathburn, now Woolery.
And I'm Brian Woolery.
And I was raised in New Braunfels Church since I was born. And I am so thankful for so many things. I remember when I was a kid, I would always tell my friends at school that my church felt more like a family, that everyone at church felt like aunts and uncles to me. And that is my first memory of church, which is very, very special. It has been such a gift that over the years, as we come back to visit New Braunfels, people that were hugely influential in my life are still there, like Joe and Darlene that taught me in children's church when I was a kid, Alita, that was my Sunday school teacher for a number of years, and Gordon and Leanne, who were the youth leaders when I was in middle school and high school. You all have had such an impact on my life and my walk with the Lord. You discipled me. The whole church showed me what it means to love like Jesus did. You also emphasized the importance of missions to me, which has been huge in my life. And you gave me so many opportunities to lead as a young person, as a teenager, that were also hugely influential in my life. I was teaching Sunday school, helping with Vacation Bible School. I was on the church board as a 16-year-old. So the amount that you invested in me over the years can never be measured. And then about that influence in missions, after I went to college and we got married, now we've been serving as missionaries with the Church of the Nazarene for the last 19 years, and you have continued to support us and our family through that whole time, and we are so, so grateful.
Yeah, it's been wonderful coming late into the New Braunfels history, but to find a place that for our family really is a home church. Whenever we're back in the States, New Braunfels is the place we go, and you are always welcoming. We never have a chance really of being back without being a part of worship with you guys or of getting to share with you. And we always know that you love us and support us. And over the many years of ministry, knowing that there is a family, a church that is consistently doing that is such an encouragement. And so we're so excited for you guys, and we are excited for how God wants to continue to use you to be a blessing, not only to our family, but also in your community and to so many other families beyond.
Know that we love you and we are praying for you, and have a wonderful celebration together this weekend. Hi.
Rathburns had neighbors, Al and Maxine Roussel, who are also attending the First Church, Nazarene Church in San Antonio. And so you can see the numbers kind of growing. And so this group decided, yeah, let's give this a shot. And maybe we can get something going in New Braunfels. So they met with Marcel Knight, who was the district superintendent at the time, and he was very supportive. He's like, yeah, let's get this going. I think they call it a home mission at the time. But they needed a place to meet. And so the McCraw, Bernice and Nan were good friends with Elaine Harris. And so Elaine has come back to our church recently, but she couldn't make it tonight. But Ray and Roy were twins, and then they married sisters. I know, and they each had 4 children. And so the numbers, you can see where that 50% children earlier came. But it gets better. So Elaine Harris and Roy offered their garage up as this is where we can start meeting. And so that was kind of the beginning of where they started meeting. And Reverend Barker, Henry Barker, was attending First Church in San Antonio and still did until he and his wife passed away. But they were, I consider them, the records show them as interim pastor, but they were the beginning. They were coming here on Sunday nights. And from October 72, when actually today, October 8th, is when that church was first officially sanctioned. And so through May 1973, he served, coming on Sunday nights to minister. But soon that garage got a little too big, or too small, as the numbers began to grow. And so this group was eager to find a place of their own. So they just formed in October 1972, but in November, they purchased land there along I-35. And this land was just very close to where the Harrises lived. And Nan indicated, actually, that at times they would meet there under a tree, just like we talked about the church point in Africa, but before you get a church built, they'd oftentimes meet there and have services. But this group was eager. I mean, I'm so impressed. They purchased land within a month of becoming a church. But they outgrew their church, and so the garage, and so they looked for a school to meet in. And so they first started out in Seal Elementary in New Braunfels and then went to Goodwin. And the principal had his young custodian, Frank Coronado. He was a 17-year-old high school senior who was attending, working as a custodian there in the school. So the principal asked Frank to open the church up every Sunday night, set the chairs up, and then lock up afterwards. So Frank would hang around, and the church befriended him. He just felt the love and grace that he had never felt before from a people. And Frank still is living in New Braunfels. He wasn't able to make it tonight, but he's a dear friend of ours. And if you know Frank, he's sort of shy, but he's got this spirit about him. He's just and the spirit, kids are attracted to him. And so here's a 17-year-old kid in the church, and one day this little girl comes up to him. And he's usually sitting in the back row, and her name was Deborah. And she wanted to give him a little kiss on the cheek, and he refused it. And that week, she was killed in an automobile accident. And so I think that changed him. They said he just started listening more in the church, and he's one of the charter members. And when my kids were little, they were drawn to Frank. He would always get pictures taken with the kids. Kids just loved him. And I can't help but think that maybe there was that point where he said, okay, I need to return the affection to these kids that are drawn to me. And so that was Frank. So I mentioned that it gets better with the kids. I couldn't find out much about the Minor family, other than they had 9 children. They had 3 sets of twins, and then 3 just singles. So I don't know. But anyhow, that will fill up a garage quick, right? And so, but I could never find them. They're unfortunately someone I have no idea where they're at. So the next pastor, who's considered the full-time pastor, is Tom Cook. And I was able to locate him. He had just got out of having some heart procedures. And hopefully it was uplifting to kind of hear how our church was doing. But he lives in Smyrna, Tennessee now. And he essentially, after leaving the hospital, he said, please let the congregation know that, I appreciate getting to hear about this. I won't be able to make it, but greetings from the hospital. And so, but it was under his leadership that the construction of the church began. And one thing he did say was, when you fill out he registered for this. Not everyone did, but he was one that registered, even though he couldn't come. So, but he said, I won't be able to attend it, but there was a blank he wanted to make sure that he checked, and that was, do you want to be added to the email list? And he checked that. He wants to keep up with what's going on here. So Clayton Taylor came on in June 1974, and it was under his leadership that the church was completed. In 1974, he moved into the church, and then he started building a 4-bedroom parsonage there on the property as well. I did locate Clayton Taylor just a couple weeks ago. I finally found him. So he's in a nursing home in Harlingen, Texas. And his daughter sent us this picture and some other ones that probably were cycling through here as y'all were fellowshipping earlier. But he's also has very fond memories and wants to send his regards to the church from Harlingen. But he was a bus driver, and I knew that Nan at one time was a school bus driver, and that was the connection of that. Besides pastoring here, he drove the school bus on the side, make a little extra money. But when he decided that he was done with bus driving, he came and grabbed, this is what have heard. I've got the authority here. And so he came and grabbed you, Nan, took you down to the bus station, and they hired you on the spot to start driving a school bus. So that's all true? That's true. All right. And that's the original church, dedicated October 6th. Actually, it was October 8th, 1974. Today. This is 50 years. This is awesome, right? And Frank, the custodian, after we moved into that church, he and his brother and his dad took responsibility for mowing the property. So Brooks maybe fine. Frank maybe still got that lawnmower. Our pastoral history over the years, and this is not counting Pastor Aaron, we've had 11 pastors. The average tenure for our pastors is 4 years. The longest tenure is Jerry Marco, 9 years. And then he served an additional 9 months as an interim. What I noticed in looking through the records, the interim periods seem to get longer as we... I don't know why that is. Earlier, it's like one pastor left and another one was there the next month. Our shortest tenure was Henry Barker. That was 7 months, and he was the one meeting in the garage, helping the church get started. We've had a number of pastors get called out of our church. Malcolm Bolger, who's I think still in Kerrville preaching. Art Reynolds, he's retired now. Evangeline in the mission field in Asia, and then we heard from Julie Rathburn. Mrs. Slide, no, there we go. Sorry, yeah. We've had a lot of volunteers, but some individuals actually were given a pastoral service title when you go back to the church records. Deanne Boswell, Bob Brandon, James Erickson, Tommy Leonard, Robert McGath, and Trey Wheelis. And some of these individuals are preaching today still. Some have passed on. And speaking of those who have deceased, over on this wall we've created this memorial for those who had been a part of our church in the past. And we want to put their name up on a block and a brick, thanking them for the foundation they laid for us. The next pastor came in was Roger Boehmle. He stayed 2 years, and he seemed like he must have been a very interesting individual. I can't find anything on him other than there were some newspaper articles, and I don't think he's in the ministry anymore or anything, but he worked with local leaders. He had this vision to get this halfway house built on the church property. And his vision was to have 48 quarters for 48 people and provide vocational training for first offenders. That this facility was also proposed to have a chapel, a game room, indoor swimming pool. But it was never constructed. But he had quite the vision. He really did. And I mean, I think that's wonderful. And Wallace Carnegie and Lucy came in. So Wallace Carnegie was retired minister, a retired Nazarene pastor, and when he retired, he was asked, "Now, what are you going to do now?" And his response was, "I would like to travel around and help out struggling churches." And that's exactly what he did. He agreed to pastor this church, but he said, only for a little while. And you can see what that little while was, right? 6 years. Pastor Mihalik. This is when I first came to the church. Pastor Jeff Mihalik was the pastor. Leanne and I came. And so he, as often with churches, there's construction stuff needed to be done. The roof was leaking. We needed more educational room facilities. So he thought, well, we can kill two birds with one stone. We can go up. Let's tear this roof off that's leaking, build what they referred to as the upper room, and put a new roof on it. Solve both problems. So that happened while he was there. He also, I'm thinking back, he had this radio program, right? Dennis Rathburn, Dwayne's brother. For a short period of time, they had this program where they would speak, have a little message, and I think Dennis would do a little music or something. But I remember listening to that during his tenure. And they were unable to make it as well, but they did send a message. They go, they've been looking at all the pictures that Leanne's been putting up. They go, we have such wonderful memories of our time with you guys. We're retired and doing well here in the St. Louis area. So, Pastor Carnegie comes out of retirement, but once again, we asked him to come out, and he agreed, this time only for 1.5 years. But the church was really struggling financially at this time. And I think for the whole 1.5 years he was here, he never took a paycheck. He just did it. And so that's pretty amazing. And then he and Lucy remained a member of our congregation until they both passed away. A very wonderful, wonderful couple. So now this is where I get to invite the other pastors that are here and to come up. And y'all can stay. You can relax today. Tomorrow we'll put y'all to work. Y'all have had a long drive down that I-35. So I have y'all in order, if you remember the order you are in, or I can tell you. So come and just sit behind me. And so what I'd like to do now, I've been telling you about the things that had happened during the tenure of some of these other pastors, but I'd like you to hear it firsthand from those that served here. And I'm going to move this out of the way. And so we're going to keep this casual, but we're just going to pass the mic around. And be sure when you get up, there's something special underneath of y'all's chairs that we'd like to give y'all. But before you speak, may I say, well, I kept trying to decide where to do this part, but I'd like to go ahead and recognize Nan, and one of her 4 daughters is here, Lisa. we've got, if someone could bring a gift bag to each of them and give them each a hand again. Thank you so much. All right, Winston.
Well, thanks to my daughter Bethany, I was able to make some notes. She drove, and I borrowed a piece of paper, which I wasn't very prepared, but I thought maybe I ought to try to write down some things. I'm Winston Wilson. I was here from 1993 to 1998. Jeffrey, I haven't seen you in a long time, man. Michael and Jeffrey were little kids on the Southwest Oklahoma district when my dad pastored there. And great memories, great memories. We moved from the Woodlands. So I started a church there in the Woodlands. Actually, I wasn't the very first pastor. I was just the first pastor to get them over 20. So, and we were there for 8 years and built a beautiful first sanctuary, and then received a call from New Braunfels, and we moved here. We love this area. Getting away from the traffic in Houston, it was like a burden that was lifted, because you got to remember New Braunfels was a little smaller in '93 than it is today, and it was a gorgeous, gorgeous area, and we fell in love with it. I was trying to think of some memories. One of my first memories is I didn't realize when I moved here, I don't believe, that part of my job was to mow about 3 acres of property. I might have thought a little longer about. I remember they had a riding lawnmower, and it had headlights, thank God. And I'd be out there late at night mowing away. That was one of my first memories as I was just jotting some things down. I remember spending over $1,000. My wife won't tell me exactly how much, on a three-legged cat that got hit on Easter morning. And I've often wondered why I didn't just put him out of his misery, but I didn't, and I would have been in big trouble if I did. Alita inherited that cat when we moved, and kept it alive. It had the best life. If you've never seen a three-legged cat snare a mouse, you just haven't lived. It was a mouser. And that was one of my memories. That was a lot of money for a three-legged cat. Yeah. Great people. You just can't say enough about the people. And when you start mentioning names, you're going to miss someone that's going to get their feelings hurt. So I apologize in advance. But these are some of the names. In fact, I texted you about one of these names. I'm horrible at names. So, and that's why I've got notes. The Sykes, the Rathburns, the Lynhams, the Balls. There was a guy by the name of Bob Robinson who was my Sunday school superintendent for several years. And he was responsible for me having to preach from a boat inside the church. He would have these Sunday school drives, and he said, if we get to this, the pastor's going to do this. And he talked me into it. I preached from the top of the church. I got on top of the church and preached from the top of the church when they broke a record. And then the last thing I remember is preaching from a moving horse. That was our horse, I think. Was it really? It probably was. And it was going pretty well till he went past the speaker. And my microphone fed back into that speaker. And I think it kind of rattled the horse a little bit, but we survived, and probably one of the shortest messages they've ever heard me preach. I was thinking, and this is who I contacted you about. We had an older man. His name, I had to talk to Joe Ball, Mr. Knox, that lived behind the church and owned quite a bit of property. And we were kind of landlocked. The only way you could get to the church property was through the feeder road. And we thought, man, maybe we could buy those 3 acres or so behind the church and get away into our property from the backside. And I don't remember how it happened, but Jim Stewart, who was not a part of the church for very long, was there. And he went with me to go talk to Mr. Knox to help us get 3 acres. And he wound up donating those 3 acres. Joe Ball was saying a part of it had to do with a relationship that he had with Darlene. And he knew them for many years. And I remember when that conversation was going really well. I remember Jim Stewart going down real low, and he was giving me the good sign. This is going good, man. And we walked out of there with him saying that he would donate some 3 acres or so of property, and that was quite a good memory, and I think it helped the church in years to come. Skeet and Dorothy Rhodes. Skeet was a retired minister. Man, he didn't retire, though. He kept working, and he did so much. Remember, he had that emu farm? He was going to make a lot of money with emus. I don't think that really ever happened, but he put in a culvert to access the back of our property. A lot of hard work. He put in this huge sign right on I-35. That was one of my dreams. Man, we got millions of cars going past this property. Let's let them know who's here. And he put that up. And I encouraged him on. Go. I didn't help a whole lot. Reverend Carnegie, I'm glad. I did not realize, or I had forgotten, probably I had forgotten, that I knew he was there right before I was. Philip Erdman came to mind. I haven't thought of him in a long time. Remember a green glass pulpit, those of you that were here in the 90s? What was on that pulpit? It was a sermon series. It had a spring. Taste and see. Yeah, it had a spring of water because, New Braunfels is known for its springs. And I did a sermon series, and if memory serves me correctly, after that series was over, he said, I've got a gift for you. And he made green glass trophies for NFL teams and NBA teams. And he went to Mexico all the time to get all these trophies. And he made this, it weighed a ton. Glass pulpit, and it was gorgeous, and he was a great guy. We used his pool to baptize people in, and Doug and Angie Burgess, a lot of good memories there. Frank Coronado, I didn't know you were going to mention Frank. I didn't know his history. My 40th birthday party, back when I thought I was old, was at New Braunfels. Somebody gave me a cane with a rear view mirror on it, and we had for several years an annual Labor Day camp out. I don't know if you remember that at all, but it was fun, and that's enough. We loved our time here. Thank you so much.
Well, Winston, I'm glad that Sunday school superintendent was gone when I came. I'm not getting on the roof for anybody. So. I arrived in the summer of 1998, and I was just at the end of my military career as an Army chaplain at Brooke Army Medical Center. And, of course, being in the military, you were used to telling people, go do this, and they would salute and run down the hall and do whatever you're going to do. And then I came to the civilian church. Yeah. It was quite a cultural change, but but I survived. I came. I wasn't going to do this with Dwayne, but I decided I would. When I came to candidate to come in, I came into the hallway that was there, and Dwayne was standing there. Everybody else was apparently inside the sanctuary waiting for me to come in. And I knew that that he was the man. You didn't have to mess with Dwayne. He was right there with notes and help, and he was really one of my very, very good friends, and still is. I didn't lose him anywhere, but he was always and has always been a good friend for me and a support. But I knew that if I needed something, the man, you go find the man, and there's always a man in the church. Now it could be a woman, but in my case, it was a man. And I came with, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but I have ideas of what I could do and where I could go. And I had a number of opportunities and things that were available to me to do, and New Braunfels wasn't one of them. But I came up, Dr. Blankenship asked me if I would just come up and visit with the people, and I had ideas. Could be a hospital chaplain somewhere. I could go back to my home state of California, and I'm glad I did not. But you have these old plans that I'm going to do this, I could do that, and I'm open to do this. But coming to the church here really wasn't one of them. But they were nice, and so I came and I visited, and I spoke. Some people liked me, and others did not. Some stayed, and others left. But I fell in love, as most of the people that are here. I fell in love with the people, and when I left, I don't know if I should have said this, but I visited with Dwayne a little bit, and I said, "Well, now what do we do? Like, this is not just the end. I mean, I want to see if this is some place that you want me to come to." And he said, "Well, we'll call you." And I thought, "Oh yeah, right." Well, basically what they did was they met, and then they gave me a call to come up there and visit with the church board. But it was the people, for me, that made this a home church. And Joyce and I were here for 9 years, and it was a delight, and I couldn't have done any better. And some had asked me if in fact I did. I got 2 different calls to go to other churches. And maybe there were some in the church that wished I had taken them. But I did not, and this was home. And then Dr. Schrader asked me when I said I was going to step down, he said, "Do you want to go to another church?" And I'm thinking, if I'm not going to do New Braunfels, I'm not going to do anything. And so I retired. I went to the hospital and was a hospital chaplain in the Methodist system. But my heart has always been with the people. They're beautiful people, beautiful church, and it has been my very fortunate event in my life that we came here and were loved and cared for. And people that are here, some of you I still recognize. Some of you were babies, and now you're big. And it's hard to grow up and watch you.
And that's a whole story of itself, of how that happened, but Jerry led us through that, and thank you so much for this.
I could talk about that if you want, but you told me I could only get 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know, and that's truly it's a long story, but it's a beautiful story. But why don't you, can you narrow it down to just a couple minutes?
Wait, he's cutting into my 5 minutes.
Yes. Well, the gentleman from Amarillo yield to the.
Well,
gentleman
yeah,
from
I
the
mean,
Bronx.
so I get some extended time.
Yeah, I
right?
give you, and Winston, if you want a couple more minutes, we'll give you a couple more.
Sons, you just can't do anything with them. Basically, we were where we were at, and we had some people that wanted to to buy our property out there. And I talked to the board about, do you want to? I mean, Rathburns actually put nails into it. But they said, no, let's go ahead and sell. The board said, go ahead, and the church said, yeah, go ahead and sell and look for some property. So I went and started looking, and all I did was basically drive around. And I drove up in this area here, and this was not for sale. This is 10 acres here from the street down to the housing down here, a full 10 acres, and it wasn't for sale. And so I just found out who owned it. It was Al Costco, and he owned the property across the street over here as well, but he wasn't interested in selling it, but he found out that we were with a Church of the Nazarene, and he didn't attend here, but he had this heart that he wanted to have this as something special if he was going to sell it and get rid of it. And so he said, well, this is going to be a church here. And he said, okay, but you can't move. If we sell it to you, you can't move it for 10 years. And that ended in 2016. So now you guys can move if you want to, but at any rate, he sold it to us for $150,000, this 10 acres here. And we sold the property across the way where they were, and to come here, and we sold the property and paid off Mr. Costco and began the building. But it wasn't for sale, and then God opened it to be sold. And Al Costco said, I have a vision, I have a ministry to sell this property to a church. And that's his legacy to this church here.
So I know up on the screen it says June 2007 when I started. That's when I started as senior pastor here. But actually, my ministry career spanned 15 years here at the New Braunfels Church of the Nazarene. And when I was told we have 5 minutes, I thought, how in the world do you put 15 years of ministry in one location into 5 minutes? And so I decided to do just a couple of things. Number one, I want to, if you were here when I started, I owe you an apology. I look back at some of my messages when I was first starting out in youth ministry. And by the way, I had hair like Winston when I first started in youth ministry, and now you see the toll that youth ministry has taken. I look back on some of those things. For those of you to remember, when I first started preaching in the church, and Dad let me preach as his youth pastor, we had an overhead projector. And I'm not talking like a projector that was over our head. It literally, like in science class, it was one of those projectors, and it had the arm thing and the light that would come down. And I remember it was a couple of my first sermons, we had those transparency papers, and I would photocopy them on Sunday morning, and those were our sermon notes. And that's how I started my ministry in June of 2000 when I started out as the youth pastor here. And so for those of you who were here then, I want to say I'm sorry. I look back on something, I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, what? I was just a kid. Like, what did I know? I was 27 years old. I had gone to grad school for counseling, and here I am. The Lord calls me into pulpit church ministry. So if you were here, I'm sorry. The second thing I want to say to you is thank you. And I'm yeah, well, I'm looking at, it's the lights. I'm not getting emotional. It's got to be the lights. I'm looking up into them. I need to hold the brick. Thank you. It looks like a church, Gordon. That's, we didn't know anything. Ashley was 2. She's now given us our first grandchild, our 13-day-old granddaughter. She was 2 years old. Alex was 3 weeks old when we arrived here. We were kids. We brand new in ministry. I took a chance. You did take a chance. You took a big chance, Dad. I don't know what you were thinking. That was a bad decision. And yet I say thank you to you because you were so patient with us. You were so gracious to us. I remember I interrupted the announcements, and this was all scripted, but I had interrupted the announcements on a Sunday morning. I had a colander on my head. I had spaghetti noodles hanging from my head because I was making the announcement about the youth fundraising spaghetti dinner that we were having after church. And I look back on those things, and I'm like, those were great days. I didn't know what I was doing, but you guys took a chance on Amy and I. So thank you. Now, 22 years under my belt, I still don't necessarily know, I think, what I'm doing sometimes. But you took a chance on us, and we went from being your youth pastor to you some way, somehow, some reason called us to take the big chair after Dad stepped down, and those were great years. And we helped transition from the old property, which I'm holding the brick, thank you. I'm holding the brick from the old property, and we moved out here, and all of the memories, and I just want to say, first of all, I'm sorry to those of you who were there at the beginning when I was cutting my teeth, and now I want to say thank you for trusting us and being gracious to us. And you loved us so well. So many people, when I walked in here this afternoon, you loved us so well. And you helped raise our kids. I did a baby dedication just last Saturday. It was last Sunday, your sister. And, well, it wasn't your sister. It was your sister's daughter, but baby dedication for your sister. Yeah, thank you. We have to talk about some things, Aaron, but yeah. His sister attends the Amarillo Church, where I'm at now, and one thing we say when we're doing the baby dedication, if we're following the liturgy and the manual, we look at the congregation and we say, do you promise to walk alongside this child and raise them up? And that's what you did for me and Amy as 27-year-old kids, and you also did that for our children as well. And so thank you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for being gracious to us through my youth pastor years into the senior pastor years. Thank you for being so gracious and loving and kind and warm. And that's probably my 5 minutes. So here, I'll give you there's the brick back. But thank you, church. We love you and we appreciate you guys. Thank you.
So before
I had loved this church, appreciated
one second.
Yes.
So before you start, Pastor Tom sent a video. He had all intentions of coming, and early on was one of the first to commit, but he was unable to attend. As you know, his wife Patty has had a lot of back troubles, and she had back surgery, but it's still hurting. They had hoped that she'd be well enough to travel, but he sent a video message. I have not viewed it yet.
Good evening, New Braunfels Church of the Nazarene. Pastor Tom McCrae here. I want to tell you congratulations on 50 years of ministry as you have glorified God, as you have served Him, as you have loved each other and loved those far from God, as you've ministered to your community. It's amazing what God has done in 50 years. I thank you, and Patty thanks you for the opportunity we had to be with you. And the ministry we're able to do, and the lives that were changed as we served together and we served one another. We celebrate with you in those who have gone before, all of us, who saw the vision to start the church and invested in the church with their time, their talent, and their treasures. Those that had a vision to continue to see it thrive and see it through the dark times and see it through the great times. And so know that you all are in our prayers as you continue to share the good news of Jesus, as you continue to love God and love people and help those who are far from Him to know Him. Know that we thank you for welcoming us in and teaching us about breakfast tacos, teaching us about great barbecue, teaching us what it looks like and means to be a Texan, and how everybody that moves to Texas that doesn't have a football team has to proclaim the Dallas Cowboys as their team. We want to thank you for the privilege of leading there in New Braunfels and us working together. One of the things that has touched our hearts as we reflect on our time with you is your heart for missions, your heart for reaching out to the community there, your heart for running races in beds to raise money for people who are underhoused, and for your willingness to adopt a school there at Klein Road and bring blessing to those in need there. Know that you all are in our prayers often. Our girls are doing well. Our oldest daughter and her family are doing well. Elizabeth, our daughter, is now teaching at a community college and loving that new part of her career. Our granddaughter, Peyton, is now 5 years old. Tomorrow, she'll actually be 5 years old. And we're just so excited to be a part of her life and to see how she's growing and maturing. We're proud of our daughter, Catherine, and her family. They've bought a house, and she currently works as an assistant manager of a warehouse that sells automotive fabric, and she's going to school to be a teacher. And we can't thank you enough for loving us, to help us to grow and minister to us. And we are just celebrating with you tonight. And please tell Dwayne Rathburn I will come back to visit Texas, and I do expect him to take me to get some kolaches. Hey, we love you all. God bless you. Have a great celebration.
I've had the privilege of being the interim here for 2 different times, but this church has always been on my heart because I actually thought I'd be starting my ministry here at this church. When I was ready to go into full-time ministry, I was talking to Dr. Knight, and he talked to me about New Braunfels. They had a group that was meeting together. I knew some that were in that group, and so after about 3 or 4 different conversations, he said, Randall, they're really not ready for a pastor yet. This is the latter part of '72. But he said the South Austin church just came open. Would you be interested in Austin? And so we had our ministry there at South Austin, but I really thought it was going to be New Braunfels. When I retired from South Austin, it took me 47 years to get here, but I became the pastor at New Braunfels. I have so appreciated this church. Of all of the 100 churches on this district, this one has always been on my heart. I helped hang some sheetrock in that former sanctuary that you had. I have known some of the retired pastors that were attending there, some of the great people that were there. Reverend Cornegie married Sandra and I 147 years ago. This church, I have been here now as an interim twice. It's about a year worth of time that I've been here. And I so love you guys. Incredible people. It is a miracle what God has done in providing this facility. Jerry, God used you in an incredible way to be able to do all that you have done. I was with the district committee going with you, looking at some facilities. And I thought the church down the road would probably be a really, really nice facility for y'all. No. And you thought you could get more for the old facility, and how in the world that Jewish blood worked through you, I don't know, but you got really a good deal. It's phenomenal to have this kind of a facility and almost debt-free at the time that you moved into it. Phenomenal, all the work that you did for it, Joe. I guess what's on my mind at an event like this, talking about 50 years, how far this church has come, the people it's impacted, is going back to those pioneers, the couples that stepped out at the beginning, and they had a vision, a dream of how God might want to use them. They had no idea how it was going to work out. Of that group of charter members, Harold and Jackie Rathburn, I knew Dwayne's mother and father. They're from San Antonio First. We're from San Antonio First. We were married there. And so I can't imagine what it was like for them moving now to New Braunfels, but there's not a Nazarene church here, and being willing to meet in a garage to begin to start something. That spirit, ordinary lay couple that got something laid on their heart. They had no idea what God was up to, but they were willing to be part of it. Paul wrote 13 of the 27 books of the New Testament. He writes about this couple that was sojourners with him, Aquila and Priscilla. In one of the writings, he talks about Aquila and Priscilla, how that they've been helpful to him in the ministry. Another time, he sends a greeting to them, to Aquila and Priscilla, and the church that's in their house. This couple, they were tent makers, just lay people, and yet they wanted to serve God, and they were willing to come along beside this evangelist and encourage him and travel with him. And then when they went back home, they got people around to begin to come in and had a Bible study, and that's what Harold and Jackie were doing. The last writings of the Apostle Paul, in 2 Timothy 4, he begins to reminisce. Alexander the coppersmith did me much harm. May the Lord deal with him accordingly. Timothy, you watch out for him. You know, all have deserted me, but the Lord hasn't deserted me. He has stood by me. He's delivered me, and he will deliver me out of the lion's mouth. And then I think a smile came on his face, and he wrote the last paragraph that his hand would pen in Scripture. He thought of someone. He said, "Greet Aquila and Priscilla." That lay couple did so much for this apostle down through his ministry. What do you think Harold and Jackie Rathburn would feel like here tonight, out of stepping out and God using it and seeing what it has accomplished? Nan, how God has used you down all these years. But I want to celebrate 50 incredible years, awesome people. What you have here is a God thing, a very good thing, and it's been a privilege for me to be part of it.
Thank you. So Pastor Chris Canton and his family then came in after interim period, and he came, and within a couple months, you know what hit was COVID. So imagine a young pastor coming in with his family, new to the area, and you can't do something like this. How do you get to know people? And so he did a lot of navigating. He, I think, did a wonderful job the 2 years he was here. We had to start going online, so we got this live stream tonight as well. I don't know if I think I mentioned that. And he, worked through the COVID stuff. We weren't alone. Churches everywhere were dealing with this. Some people thought restrictions were too tight, so they would leave. Some people thought weren't strong enough, so they'd leave. And so that's a tough time for anybody. And Pastor Chris, I felt like, navigated us through those uncharted waters so very well. I'm very appreciative of Pastor Chris and his family. And so when Pastor Chris decided that God was calling him to something else, then that's when Pastor Aaron came in.
That's me. I obviously don't have the history that all of these gentlemen have here. I have 3 months, so it's been a good 3 months. But I will say and just echo what each one of them has said about how patient and welcoming and friendly each and every one of you have been to our family, and so we are incredibly thankful for that. And as we are taking on this role is the first time for myself, and as I'm learning that and figuring that out, I just want to say thank you for the way that you have loved us so well over these last few months. As I was coming in to take on this role, one of the things that became apparent pretty quickly was that we were going to have a 50th anniversary in October, and I was like, that's great. I don't know anything about the church. So what a great opportunity. This has really been like a learning experience. I feel like I should have been taking notes. But it's been a great learning experience, and just hearing the story of this church. You know, when I came, I opened with a series about stories, because God's been telling a story throughout all of history, all of creation, and we have a part in that story, and that story is continuing on today. And I've loved hearing the story. But one of the things I told Gordon as he said, well, is there any, he was asking me a little bit of direction and where we were going, and I was like, well, I mean, I have no history. I said, but I do know this. I said, I know that if we just make this a weekend that's about what happened in the good old days, that we failed. Because we should be a church that's still moving forward. God is still on the move today. He's going to be on the move tomorrow and in the days to come. And so that's my role in this, is that while we've been able to look at the past and celebrate what God has done, because God's been faithful, and we need to celebrate that, and we need to praise him for that. But we also recognize that God has more to do, that there's more for this church, that the harvest isn't finished, that we haven't finished the race. But I'm reminded of Paul and his words to the Philippians. And I feel like this little passage of Scripture sums up our weekend pretty well. In chapter 1, verse 3, he says, every time I think of you, I give thanks to my God. Whenever I pray, I make my requests for all of you with joy. For you have been my partners in spreading the good news about Christ from the time you first heard it until now. And I am certain that God, who began the good work within you, will continue his work until it is finally finished on the day when Christ returns. And so, friends, as I sit here and as I sit in this last chair on the row, I was joking with somebody earlier that they had their years. I think it was maybe Dwayne. So Dwayne, you're a common theme. I don't know if you've recognized that or not. But he had his years of when he became a member, and it said through present. And I said mine would just say present. But as I sit here in this chair on the last chair into the row, I can't help but think about the foundation that we have to build on and continue off of from what God has done. And I'm excited about the days ahead. I think God has some amazing things in store for this church and for this community. And what a privilege it is to be a part of it. So thank you all for, again, just the way that you've all welcomed us. And we look forward to continuing to celebrate throughout the rest of this weekend.
So just had a couple other things. I'll make an announcement. And I think I saw that Bible verse on something earlier, didn't I, Kiki? Did he know about that, or? Okay, so y'all have I think we just saw a God thing. As you open your gifts, I think you might recognize something Aaron just read. And so I thought, how did he know what was in? So, this has been great. It's a great evening for me. I hope it was been for y'all as well. But I wanted to just once again acknowledge the charter members, the ones who've come since, the pastors, and just thank you so much. We're going to cut off live streaming now because we're going to play a song and do the copyright.